So welcome, as I said, we are so excited to be here with you today. This is a project we started working on back in April, so it's really exciting to our team for this to actually come to fruition now and to be able to connect with you and get this really started. And what we wanted to do today was help you understand why we're working with Washington STEM to develop and deliver these trainings and give you a sense of what you can expect as we move forward in the next few months. And at the end, you'll have a chance to ask questions if you have any. But I wanted to start by introducing our organization and my colleagues and myself and how we got to where we are in leading this project with you. We all are at REL Northwest. We're at the Regional Education Laboratory in the Northwest region. If you're not familiar with the Regional Education Labs or RELs, you're forgiven. But what we are is we are tasked by the Federal Department of Education and the Institute for Education Sciences in particular to serve as a bridge in our region between practice and research. So we do what we can to help support educators and policymakers in several ways, but most often by conducting applied research. We work to disseminate research and provide technical assistance and coaching to apply research in the classroom, which is why we're here today. Our Northwest region includes Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, and Alaska. So I'm sure you feel very sorry for us and all the terrible places we have to travel for our work. Patty's asking in what content areas, and really we span the content holders that are of interest to our stakeholders. So we work to be as responsive as we can to the needs in the region, and we are nimble in that way that we can help address the things that are most pressing in the regions of the people we're working with. So the team here on the ground is myself, Karen Lewis, and then my colleagues, the wonderful Lauren Bates and Shannon Davidson. These are our photos, nice and polished, but we also wanted to peek in and say, hi, if you can see us up there in the corner in our terribly ugly conference room, but we're really here, we're real live people, we're excited to be with you. And we've all been at Education Northwest and working in this content area for a number of years now and are very excited to get the chance to develop these trainings and work with you all. We are working in partnership with Washington STEM, and my colleague and collaborator and partner in crime here, Carlin, is on the line, and I wanted to give him a chance to pop in and say a little bit about Washington STEM. So Carlin, I'm going to unmute you now, or attempt to. We'll see if it works.
You did.
Are you there, Carlin?
I am. Can folks hear me?
Hi.
Hello. I won't belabor the point, but I just wanted to say hello and let people know that the regional math coordinators are becoming more and more familiar with me in Washington STEM as we go. But for some of the educators on the line, just a quick word to say that Washington STEM is a nonprofit. It's a statewide nonprofit based in Seattle, but serving the whole of the state of Washington with a mission of making STEM education more equitable and more excellent for all the kids of Washington. And we have a strong commitment to mathematics and early mathematics, and we're super excited to be in partnership with all of you, including our colleagues at the REL, to take everybody's learning forward and to create some great new resources that we can all use to continue to advance the cause, and just a lot of gratitude to be involved in the project. So good to meet you if we haven't met, and thank you for the opportunity to partner.
Thank you, Carlin. It's great to partner with you as well. And here are some of Carlin's colleagues in-house there at Washington STEM that have been a part of this project and helped support the development of the materials that we'll be working with you with. And we sure appreciate all of their support. It certainly has been a team effort. So I wanted to start and kind of ground the project that we'll be digging into by answering the question you might have is, why are we worried about math and why are we focusing on math specifically? As Carlin mentioned, Washington STEM has 4 initiatives, and one of those initiatives is early math, so this work aligns with that initiative. And one of the reasons that Washington STEM and we have been really diving in here to think about math is that we know how very critical early math skills are. Early math skills predict success in all academic domains down the road. And in fact, we know that early math skills are one of the better predictors of academic achievement, and not just in math, but in all other domains as well. What's more, we know that early math skills are really foundational for success in a number of fields, and not only in kind of the achievement sector, but also just in daily life. So in these ways, math really serves as a gateway, especially early on, and can open up doors or even close doors for students that avoid math and struggle in those areas. We also know and have chosen to focus on math for the reason that we know there are some concerning opportunity gaps that exist in early math. I'm showing you here some data from the Washington Kindergarten Entry Assessment, WAKIDS. These are data collected in the 2016-17 school year. And this is showing you the percentage of children in various categories that entered kindergarten and were deemed to be ready for math, so had the math skills ready to step into kindergarten and succeed. And we see here, even at this very young age, some really concerning gaps, particularly between Hispanic and low-income students and their more the white and Asian students that are their peers. We also want to focus on math because we believe that math, more so than other areas, is a domain that kind of can carry some baggage that sets students up to hold particularly negative attitudes and beliefs about themselves as learners. Math is different from other fields because it's really not all that rare to hear someone enthusiastically endorse, "I'm so bad at math, I'm just not a numbers person." You will hear this, you know, in daily life, no problem. But we never hear people also as enthusiastically say things like, "I'm just not a letters person," or "I'm so bad at reading." We have this cultural acceptance about negativity towards math that people will openly share with one another. In addition to this kind of cultural negativity that's become the norm in some ways in our culture, we also hold some pretty strong stereotypes about who is going to be good at math. Now, on the screen here, I'm showing with you, these are the first 5 images that I found when I did a Google image search for math genius. I want you to just take a peek at these images and see what you might notice. And if anything stands out to you and you want to share it in the chat feature, that would be great. Lots of numbers, white or Asian heritage, all male. You might have noticed the age diversity Carlin's pointing out. They're mostly very young. I noticed that everyone is wearing glasses. Fits the geeky scientist stereotype. We think this is indicative of some of the assumptions we hold in our culture that reflect who we expect to be good at math, and it's not girls or people of color besides white and Asian individuals. It also reflects this notion we have about math genius as being something that's innate. You're born that way. You're just a math whiz from birth. So this really doesn't set up the kind of attitudes we know to be really important in the classroom about math skills and abilities being something that can grow with time and effort. I like this quote from Shelley Corral because it points out that how we feel about our skills is really important. And so she writes that boys do not pursue mathematical activities at a higher rate than girls because they are better, but rather they do so at least partially because they think they are better. And what this is pointing to is that all of the stereotypes we have in our society can really favor some students over others and set some students up to hold quite positive attitudes and beliefs about their math skills and set others up to be quite doubtful and negative about their math skills. So this is concerning to us because we know that there are really persistent and pervasive gender gaps in math and the rest of the STEM fields, STEM meaning science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And as I was mentioning earlier, these gender gaps are at least in part due to the kinds of stereotypes we hold about STEM fields being associated with boys and men, and the stereotype that girls are less talented or able in math fields than men. So these stereotypes kind of work together to further those gaps that we see in gender participation. But we also know they work similarly in ways for people of color and minorities that also have negative stereotypes that they're quite familiar with about their intellectual abilities. We think it's also really important to think about math attitudes and how educators and adults can shape the attitudes of students, because there's abundant research to show us that adults' attitudes really matter. We know that children whose parents are math anxious or who are taught by teachers that are math anxious are themselves more likely to go on and develop math anxiety. And not only are they more anxious about math, but it also impacts their achievement. We also know that how teachers feel about their own math skills and their math mindsets influence the kinds of feedback and support they give to students, particularly when they're struggling. And we also know that classroom environments, even in very subtle and inadvertent ways, can signal who belongs there and who is expected to succeed. So all of these factors work together in some ways to set up adults as really important people in the lives of children to be able to help them or hurt them when we aren't aware and conscious of our own attitudes and mindsets. But the good news, of course, is that adults can help. There is research and many different attitudes and beliefs that we have been combing through over the past few months to show that through various intentional classroom practices and strategies and interventions, the educators can work in the math classroom to help build positive math attitudes and shape children's experiences of how they feel about themselves as learners in the math field. And we're really excited to be able to take this research and distill it for you and the colleagues that you work with into some actionable practice strategies and interventions that you can use in the classroom with students. So now I want to get a little more specific, and I'm going to turn the mic over to my colleague, Lauren Bates, and she's going to walk us through which particular attitudes and beliefs we have focused in on this project that we're going to be working in the months to come.
Thanks, Karen. Hello, everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. And I'm just going to do a quick check, make sure no one is writing in the chat. Now, looks like we are good. All right. So an important thing for us to determine was which attitudes and beliefs are important when influencing adults and students' attitudes about math. And one of the most influential researchers about this right now is Camille Farrington. She's at the University of Chicago and works with the Chicago Consortium for School Research. And she's been studying all kinds of what some people call non-cognitive factors, other people call non-academic skills, some people call social-emotional learning and development skills. And she found that there's a set of key mindsets, which she has called academic mindsets, that are very important for student success, not only in school but in life. And these mindsets are not the sort of things that are typically caught and measured by standardized tests that students become more and more accustomed to taking these days. But these mindsets are the sort of foundation from which academic behaviors students have flow. Academic behaviors like being able to study hard, actually showing up to class, sticking with schools and assignments when there are setbacks or they're very challenging. These are the sort of academic behaviors that in turn lead to really positive academic outcomes for students. And it's really important to note that a student's academic mindset is not just something that they have, it's something that the environment around them helps shape and influence. So the learning environment that a student encounters at school really can shape their academic mindset and set into motion this beautiful process of having positive academic mindsets that lead to positive academic behaviors and then positive academic outcomes. So Farrington has distilled 4 different key academic mindsets that she thinks are important for all academic development, not just math. And these are the 4 of them that she has been combing the research and has published a quite influential literature review about them, and that these are the 4 that have the strongest research base for influencing students positively. Now, in the training sessions that we have developed for you all, we're going to focus on the first 3 of these 4, plus we have an additional 4th one that we are going to go into, and I'm going to hand this over to my colleague Shannon Davidson to go ahead and walk you through in a little more detail.
Thank you, Lauren. So throughout this series of trainings, we are excited to apply these mindsets to math specifically, and our goal is to better understand how the students' attitudes about math specifically kind of map onto these academic mindsets. The first mindset is I belong in this community, and this refers to students' sense of belonging. We'll review research on the importance of the sense of belonging, and we'll really have a chance to get into the different components of belonging. The second mindset of I can succeed at this refers to self-efficacy, and we'll be discussing math self-efficacy and reviewing the foundations for how self-efficacy beliefs are formed. The third mindset, which Sorry, we're trying to do a couple of things at once. It's pulling up the polling feature. There we go. The third mindset is my ability and competence grow with my effort. And this refers to students' mindsets about their intelligence. So we'll review research on the importance of holding a growth mindset as opposed to holding a fixed mindset and discuss why the domain of math might be particularly likely to set some students up to hold fixed mindsets. And finally, in addition to these three academic mindsets, we are adding a fourth topic, which is math anxiety, because there's abundant literature that identifies this as an important dimension of student success in the math classroom. So here's a little preview about what's to come and some of the strategies that we're going to be discussing in each of these sessions. In our session on belonging, we'll talk about how to create inclusive spaces, build relationships, and attend to any implicit messages about who belongs in math. For self-efficacy, we'll learn about how to help students succeed through scaffolding, setting and monitoring goals, and recognizing success. In our growth mindset session, we'll discuss ways that we as educators can cultivate our own growth mindset, how to work with students by praising process and effort and supporting them in developing their own growth mindset. And finally, we'll learn techniques for combating math anxiety, including cultivating self-awareness, building skills, incorporating mindfulness activities into the classroom, and creating an environment in which mistakes are something to be celebrated. So we really want to make sure that this is as useful for you as possible, because we're excited that you're joining us for this adventure. We really want to know where your interests lie, where your familiarities lie, what you think is the most important for either you as an educator or for any teachers that you work with. So we are going to put up a quick poll, and bear with us while we get this poll going. Oh, it should be there on the right-hand side of your screen. So these are just two questions to help us kind of understand familiarity and level of interest for these topics. So the first question is, which topic most interests you? And we are asking you to just pick one. This is certainly not binding, and we're not tracking it, but just to give us a little snapshot about where the initial interest is. And the second question is, where do you believe that teachers are in need of the most support? And again, just picking one to give us a little snapshot. And it looks like responses are starting to come in. We're seeing a lot of interest in self-efficacy. And in terms of where teachers need the most support, it looks like math anxiety and self-efficacy are coming in strong. So that's interesting. Give it another minute and see if anyone wants to submit a response. I will note that there aren't any which are getting no responses. So I think there is some interest in all of these topics and also perhaps some need across the board. Looks like growth mindset, anxiety, and self-efficacy are in a dead heat for where teachers need the most support. And anxiety and self-efficacy as well are topics that are interesting. Okay, that gives us a real kind of clue about where some of the interests and familiarity and needs are. So I appreciate your perspective on that.
Well, let me shut the poll.
So we'll shut this poll down, and then Karen's going to give you an idea about logistically and schedule-wise what to expect from these sessions in the coming months.
All right, thank you, Shannon. Okay, so what to expect? Well, as we have hopefully made clear at this point, our goal is going to be to walk you through a set of materials we've developed that can be used in the classroom to promote positive math attitudes. And what we've done here is taken a train-the-trainer approach. We've developed out a set of materials that we will use on you first as the guinea pigs, if you will forgive the phrase, where we will walk you through the materials that you will then be equipped after completing the sessions to turn around and use with other adults in your setting. So we know some of you are instructional coaches, some of you are teacher leaders. We're hoping that this will either be practical for you to use in your own practice as a math educator or in supporting the math educators in your setting. Each session will include several materials, and these are going to be a PowerPoint slide deck. The slide deck includes an introduction to the topic. We define it. We walk through the research outlining why it's important for outcomes. And then we spend a good chunk of time digging into the kinds of classroom practices and strategies that can be used to promote that attitude or build it in students. In addition to this PowerPoint slide deck, we also have a detailed facilitator's guide. This is an annotated guide that is an accompaniment to the PowerPoint slide deck so that you could take our slide deck and with this guide be able to turn around and deliver that training yourself. We've also built handouts for implementing the various strategies we'll review, and these are handouts targeted at a teacher. So if you wanted to turn around the next day and give a handout to a teacher interested in an intervention on supporting students' belonging, this would be the kind of equipment you could share with them. In addition, we also have put together some resources for measurement, some ways to get at kids' attitudes in the classroom and get a sense for where their starting point is and attempt to measure and see if interventions have had any success. And we also have a brief literature summary that distills the 4 topics that we're going to cover and makes a case for why they're important and how we might build them. As I mentioned, in each of the sessions, we will start with an introduction to the research on the topic that we hope will be very accessible and make the case for why the attitude is important. And then we'll spend the majority of the time reviewing the strategies that promote positive math attitudes, with opportunities always built in to practice those strategies and or discuss them with your peers and get ideas for how to implement these in your unique settings. Now, we wanted to alert you ahead of time that some of the content we cover in the sessions will be repeated across the different sessions. We want each of these different training sessions to stand alone with the assumption that you might not be using it with every teacher you come across. So whenever there's a really key idea, we have included it in multiple sessions so that that really gets communicated. The materials we put together are often targeted at activities with larger groups, but we're also going to provide suggestions for conducting the trainings with smaller groups if that's relevant to you in your setting. We thought it would be a good idea here at the outset to talk a little bit about norms, and we want to reassure you that we will do our best in all cases to respect your time. We know you're very busy and you probably have other PD requirements and things that are on your plate, and so we hope to be able to give you the training that you need and do it as quickly and concisely as possible. We also promise to honor your expertise. We know that you are more closely connected to students than we often are as researchers here at our organization, and we want to be able to learn from your expertise and get your feedback on our materials and the strategies we've suggested. So in each session, we will build in time to be able to have a dialogue about what you think is promising, what you have concerns about, so that we can iterate on these materials and make sure they're in as good a shape as they can be. We also promise to be available to you between meetings to answer your questions. We very much hope that you will be able to take these materials and dive in as quickly as possible, and we want to be responsive and be able to answer any questions, concerns, or issues that come up when you're using our materials. Now, on the other hand, we ask that you participate actively and share that expertise that we really value as people that work so closely with students and teachers. We also ask that you be open to new ideas. If our materials and strategies we cover are things that are new to you, we hope you'll be open and willing to try them. We also ask that you be willing to reflect on your own attitudes and beliefs about math. As we mentioned earlier in the session, the research really points to how critically important it is that adults are aware of their own attitudes and how those can be communicated to adults. So we're going to spend a lot of time digging in there and making sure we're all doing some self-reflection about how we feel about math and how we might have come, based on our past experiences, to have gathered those attitudes ourselves. So So the sessions themselves will be a mix of in-person trainings and webinar trainings. We will be delivering 2 of the 4 sessions live and in person in both Wenatchee and Spokane. The other sessions will be delivered via webinar. For those of you that have a conflict or are not in those locations, all trainings will be available as webinars after the event. So you won't miss out if you can't attend one of the in-person sessions. These will all be recorded and available afterwards. However, as I'll talk about in a minute, if you want to earn clock hours for your participation in these training sessions, we can only award clock hours when you view the webinar in real time so that we can verify your participation, which is our requirement with OSPI. We can award you up to 6 clock hours for your participation in all sessions. And what's required of us to award those clock hours is, first of all, we'll need completion of sign-in sheets. I'm sure most of you are familiar with these requirements, but I'll just remind you here. So for the in-person sessions, that'll be a paper and pencil sign-in sheet. For the webinars, I'll be able to download that information from our webinar platform about who logged on. So it's critical here that if you're viewing the session from on the webinar platform, that you do so from your own computer so that we'll be able to verify your participation. And then the other thing we'll need from you at the very end of all the training sessions is completion of some evaluation questions. So the meeting schedule is here for you. We do not have specific times yet, but these are the dates that we'll be holding them. And we're ready to get kicked off at the beginning in the new year. We'll let things calm down over the holidays, but we'll start with Growth Mindset, which will be an in-person training. We'll be in Wenatchee on January 10th and then Spokane on January 11th. And then we'll follow up with a webinar on the 12th for people that are unable to attend those sessions. Math Anxiety will be a webinar, not a live training, and that will be for everyone on February 1st. With Sense of Belonging, we're back live in person in Wenatchee on the 21st of February and then in Spokane on the 22nd of February, and a webinar the following day on February 23rd if you're unable to attend those dates. And then we'll finish up with Math Self-Efficacy as a webinar on the 15th. We chose Growth Mindset and Sense of Belonging as the trainings to do in person because the content there is a little more there was just more to cover, and so we wanted to be able to do that live in person with you and in a little longer time span. The live meetings will be 90 minutes to 2 hours, and the webinars for the Math Anxiety and Self-Efficacy will be shorter, around 45 minutes to 60 minutes. So at this point, that is what to expect and what's coming up next, but we wanted to give you a chance to ask questions if you have them. I also want to leave my email address up here on the screen and my phone number here at my desk. If you have any questions in the meantime, I'm really happy to take them and have you call and be in touch. We will be getting in contact with the folks that are on the ground there, the regional math coordinators, to schedule the rooms for the in-person trainings and the time frame to expect. So Patty, I see your comment there. I'll reach out to you directly, and we can work on setting that up. But I'm going to pause on talking here for a minute and just let that all sink in and let people ask questions if they have them. You can either type it into the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you. Deborah has asked if we have access to the slide deck after this meeting. Yes, we do, Deborah. That is true of this and all the other meetings. I will share out the slide deck as well as a recording of the webinar and make that available to you. We will have a website, a web page where all the materials from these sessions will be linked to, and you'll be able to access them before and after the meetings. I meant to mention earlier that we will also, before the meetings, often be sharing out some pre-readings for you to do ahead of the meetings in case you want to read up, be an eager beaver, and learn a little bit more about the topic before we see you. Can the in-person meetings include Zoom for Yakima? Asked Dawn. We will think about that. We have our in-person meetings are longer because they include quite a bit of interactivity. So we had thought that would work better not to webinar in the live in-person meetings so that the folks at another location might lose the thread of what's happening. But if there's a group in Yakima, several people that would be attending at the same time and might be able to take advantage of that interactivity, we can play around with that idea. Alternatively, they can always attend the webinar that's the day after the live trainings. Any other questions come up for people? Patty asks, are the resources just to use for your own use? They are for your own use, but we also are hoping that you will use them with teachers that you work with. So this is very much there for you to use however works for you. Either share out to the teachers you actually work with and conducting the trainings yourself. Use a similar strategy where they take other people through the training. Once these resources get a formal stamp of approval from our funders at IES, we'll be able to share them out with you, and you can do with them what works best for you. All right, well, if no one has any other questions, then we will wrap things up and let you out a little bit early. We are, again, I can't say it enough, but we're so excited for this to come to fruition. We're really looking forward to meeting you all in person and get started with this. And please don't be a stranger, reach out if you have any questions or concerns in the interim months. But otherwise, we will see you in January, and happy holidays all.